Lloyd Vance Insider Football is back on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. Thanks, everybody, for joining with us. Got my usual tag team partner, Kevin Midgette, with me. Kevin, how you doing this evening, man? There better
Doing
not be no insider pictures of Kevin out there interlocking hands with an NFL official getting coveted inside information. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing well, man. I tell you what, in this day and age of cameras everywhere, nobody's shy anymore. No one even leaves nothing to chance on these days.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've been on a bunch of shows talking about that very topic, and I guess we'll start with it's the TMZ era. They always send me. They used to send me stuff to post on my site when it was pretty big, and they still do. We got the inside pictures of this. You want to post it? I always try to stay away from this kind of stuff, but just talk quickly about Diana Rossini and New England Patriots head coach Mike Vrabel. They were in Arizona. They were supposed to. I don't think they were talking football, man. I mean, what's going on here?
I don't know, man. I mean, you're talking to a guy right now. Like, I don't watch Fox News. I don't watch CNBC. I don't care that much. You know where I get my news from? TMZ. That's my feed. That's where I go to. And there, you saw the picture of Rossini and Vrabel, blah, blah, blah. But then I see another picture on Twitter. Once again, watch Lloyd and Kevin on Twitter. Or the X, I should say. But I see a picture of them, and there's like friends around them as they're hanging out together. So I'm like, is this AI? I don't know what's AI and what's not AI anymore. I don't know if people are wiping people from pictures or they're adding people to pictures. I don't know, man. But I tell you what, in this media world that we live in right now, you guys should be watching your backs if you're married.
Yeah, that's the main thing, and it's just like I was on earlier, Rich, and he's like, "Well, what do you think, Lloyd?" And I said, "Well, it'll probably be situation, unfortunate, it'll probably be blowback on Diana Rossini if this comes out to be correct. Already we know that the New York Times, who owns the Athletic that she works for, is doing their own investigation, and it'd probably be a he said, she said type of thing, and but if it goes awry, she'll probably lose her job, and I really don't see Vrabel, being disciplined at all from Robert Kraft and Elliot Wolf talked today, the GM. Uh, he talked today for the Patriots, but he didn't. They didn't ask any questions about it, and it's business as usual.
What the hell is Robert Kraft going to tell that man? That man is a billionaire going to strip mall massage parlors. So it's like, I'm not taking any heat from Robert Kraft. Robert Kraft is like, it's cool. It's cool. So, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, say, once again, just throwing it out there, say they were engaging in a relationship. That being said, they're two grown-ups, man. That's between them and their spouses to figure out, man. That's not a job-losing kind of thing, you know?
Yeah,
Unless for the coach of Michigan who finds that stuff out and then goes to the place and grabs a butter knife, then it's a deal. But, if it's just two consenting adults, I mean, what are you going to do?
yeah. And the guy in Michigan cut a deal, so I don't think he's facing any jail time, and he's working on his settlement with the university, and if that's what happens here, I'm sure Rossini or Vrabel, but I doubt it would happen to him. They'll work on a settlement and the non-disclosure and all that stuff. But we'll see how this thing plays out. But as you said, it's better to talk about on-the-field activities, and we'll see what happens there. We'll leave that the TMZ and Entertainment Tonight and all those outlets. Lots more to get to here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029, the Game Coast Sports Digital Network. Thanks for everybody joining us now. Rossini has been first out there a lot of time in terms of reporting on a potential trade of A.J. Brown going to the New England Patriots after June 1st. Do we think that trade is going to happen? The Eagles just traded for Dontavian Wicks, 24-year-old receiver from the Green Bay Packers, for a fifth-rounder this year and a sixth-rounder next year. What do you see happening with A.J. Brown and Philadelphia Eagles?
Oh, he's gone. June 2nd, he's gone. There's no doubt about it. I don't know which team it's to. It's going to happen. That's a fact. I love the fact, though, that the Eagles couldn't get anyone besides Dotson, Johan Dotson, to be their third wide receiver. And then they got three guys that could be their third wide receiver right now. The sad part is for the Eagles, one of them's going to have to be a number two. And that's when they're going to run into a problem again.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you. All along, I thought maybe A.J. Brown, that they would have him come back um, but I just don't see it happening. I think the Eagles, yes, they're saying all the right things behind the scenes, but they want him gone. He's been a distraction in the locker room. He's obviously not getting along anymore with Jalen Hurts, and it's going to be something where they step away from him probably after the draft. As we said, the cap hits a lot less around June 1st. Dontavian Wicks, he's only 24. He had 30 receptions last year for 332 yards for the Green Bay Packers and 2 TDs. If Brown did get let go or traded, it would be Devontae Smith, who would be your number one. And then, as you said, the Eagles are making moves to get guys. They have Hollywood Brown now, Elijah Moore, and a couple other options in the cupboard.
Yeah, and like we said, it's like they've had problems finding that number 3 wide receiver. They got 3 of them now. Now the thing is, if one of them has to step in the 2 spot, and I am a huge Devontae Smith fan. Don't get me wrong, I love the Slim Reaper. That being said, I don't want him being my number 1, to be honest, unless there's a high-end number 2. I just don't like that matchup for him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because A.J. Brown pulled a lot of the coverage over to his side of the field, and and it's like, where do they go from there? I think A.J. Brown opened it up for Devontae Smith, in his opinion. Devontae Smith, 77 receptions last year. He had 1,008 yards and 4 touchdowns, and A.J. Brown was right around there, around 1,003. So it's going to be up to Goddard and some of these other guys on offense. The Eagles spread the ball around too.
Most definitely. And the Eagles' biggest problem, I still think, is going to be that offensive line. If you can't protect Jalen Hurts, that's going to be an issue. If Devontae Smith is your number 1 wide receiver, that's an issue. It starts with the protection. And I think Jalen Hurts, we talked about it last week, the guy's a winner. He goes out there, he knows how to win games. That being said, you're stacking the deck against him a little bit with what they're sending out there.
Yeah, and it's a situation where I do agree with you that the offensive line is going to be key for them, and then Saquon Barkley is having a bounce back season, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Philadelphia Eagles go forward from there.
Most definitely. And another thing I saw a quote from, because I don't want to steal it like it's my own. I don't want to say it was Keith Pompey who first, responded to it, but Seth Joyner, I know, made a rebuttal to it. It was the fact that Jalen Hurts is getting all this flack after his contract, about extensions and this and that. Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert signed contracts at the same time, and those guys don't get any of that flack. Jalen Hurts has been to 2 Super Bowls. He's won a Super Bowl. So why aren't Herbert and Burrow under the same criticism as Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, it's crazy how that works because, when you look at Herbert, it's a situation where he's a guy. Everybody says, oh, their stats are kind of similar, but he hasn't done half of what Jalen Hurts has done in his career. There was a side-by-side out there on the internet, and I pulled it, Justin Herbert, 0 playoff wins, 0 division titles, 0 first seeds clinched. He has 3 Players of the Week awards to his credit, and he's 4-8 versus KC and Buffalo. He even had a 4 interception game in the playoffs, and then Jalen Hurts, 6 playoff wins, 3 division titles, 2 Super Bowls been to, and he's won 1. So I agree with you that it's like everybody else, get off of Hurts' back. I think the Eagles are going to have to go into the draft and try to improve their offensive line, which is getting older, and their defensive line that's had some defections.
Yeah, it's what they're going to have to do. And at the end of the day, Howie's been kind of back. Howie hasn't been extra Howie this offseason. So it's going to depend on what he does in the draft to see how this team goes forward.
Yeah, and when in terms of the Eagles roster, we're looking at that. You have the receivers that we talked about, the offensive line, with Jordan Mailata coming back. He's kind of young and still healthy. You have Landon Dickerson, who's a little beat up. Cam Jurgens, who's had some difficulty staying healthy from last year. Tyler Steen, who was a little bit of an underachievement. And then you had Lane Johnson. Hey, everybody was at his wedding this weekend. Guy gets married, but he's getting up there. He's about, 35 years old or so, and you wonder if his body's still going to still be in good shape. Do you think O-line's the number one spot for the Philadelphia Eagles to go after?
Most definitely. I mean, when they were winning Super Bowls, they were running the ball. In the ball, the touch push fame, and everything else. Lane Johnson, as we spoke about before, is the fact that he's playing for the gold jacket right now. I mean, that guy gives 100% on the field, don't get me wrong, but Father Time's undefeated. His body's had some breakdowns. That being said, yeah, offensive line's going to control their destiny, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that line, they got Coach Cooper coming over. It came out that Vic Fangio, who was his head coach in Denver, gave him the thumbs up to the Eagles staff to replace Jeff Stoutland. We'll see if he's able to do that. Got some big shoes to fill there, and the offensive line, they did draft some guys late in the draft last year. Miles Hinton in the 6th round, Cameron Williams also in the 6th round. But they need some younger players there. And let's face it, with Jason Kelsey retiring a couple of years ago, that was a big hole, and that unit just did not have the consistency last year that they had in the past.
Well, the thing is also, you got to think when Kelsey retired, it's like, all right, we have Jurgens, we have Dickerson. We had some guys we thought that were bodies that you can put in there, Even Beckham, who came over, he was a nice little fill in there for a year. And now you're looking at it, it's like, now they're really thin right now. With Stoutland gone, I want to see what the attitude's going to be for those offensive linemen coming in, the veterans. How mad are they about Stoutland being gone?
Yeah, and that's a situation where, yeah, their coach was beloved, and those guys, you heard Jordan Mailata every time he was introduced. You like Stoutland, that was the guy that taught him how to play the position, good enough to be a Pro Bowler, borderline All Pro guy, and they're going to have to keep Jalen Hurts clean because let's face it, we both said we're resigning A.J. Brown leaving, and that they're going to need some more time for these guys to get open in their roots. And Saquon, in 2025, he signed that extension, 2 years, $40 million, still the highest paid back in the league. They got to get him going. So offensive line still an area of need for the Philadelphia Eagles. I still believe, though, that defensive line, Jordan Davis, they gave him an extension. Jalen Carter's coming up, but they need somebody to replace, like you talked about Milton Williams from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. That's when the key of the draft comes. That's when you sit there, you fill up your cupboard just a little bit. And let's be honest, the Eagles, they lost some guys, and that's what happens when you make runs deep into the playoffs. That's what happens when you go to the Super Bowl and you win. I mean, these things are going to happen. The key is how you respond to this, and that's all on Howie in about, a week and a half.
Yes, and as Kevin just alluded to, the draft will be April 23rd through the 25th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 3-day affair. Kevin and I went over it last week. First day, it'll be the first round. Second day, rounds 2 and 3. And then the third day will be rounds 4 through 7. I always like to see that for the diamonds in the rough. And we're talking NFL Draft here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9, the Game Coast Sports Digital Network. Thanks for being with us this evening. A lot of the top picks are visiting teams now. They call them top 30 visits. We'll get into that in a minute and then pick up our mock draft / team needs. We'll start with Miami Dolphins at a number 11 because we hit the top 10 last week. But before we do that, Kevin, I wanted to talk to you about Travis Hunter is now going to be more of a full-time corner than receiver. It was something we had talked about last year. I was like, that guy should be a corner, and they kept trying to put him out there at receiver. They said he's still going to have packages at receiver. He did have 28 receptions for 298 yards and 1 offensive TD, but he had a severely sprained LCL that ended his season in late October. Is this the right decision for Hunter? He's 6'1", 185, being mostly a corner out there.
He's a very, very small man, Lloyd. I remember that first game they played in London. I'm like, I didn't realize how small he was compared to NFL players. Another thing also to consider is Travis Hunter has had a bad offseason personally. If anyone doesn't know, you should go Google it. I'm not going to sit there and do my TMZ spin on it. All I know is at the end of the day, we should all listen to Coach Prime when it comes to matters of relationships. I'll put it that way. So Travis Hunter had a bad offseason that way. He's a small guy. It's like if you put him out there on both sides of the field, he's going to get hurt. You invested a huge pick in this guy. Play him on defense. Put him in a position to succeed, and that's the best thing they can do.
Yeah, I agree with you. Have him at corner where he can be in coverage. They can drop coverage to help him. Liam Cohen and his defensive staff there, they'll make sure they keep an eye on him in terms of rolling coverage over there. And then maybe it helps in special teams too. I always kind of looked at him as like a Devin Hester type because Hester was similar coming out of Miami. They didn't really know where to use him. They used him on offense, and he didn't really fit there. But he just made tremendous plays as a special teamer. So, Hunter has that blazing speed, and why not allow him to use those coverage skills? And as you said, always want to emulate Deion Sanders. Well, Deion was mostly a full-time corner, and then he dabbled in receiver. So that is where we are with Travis Hunter. We'll see how Jacksonville Jaguars continue with him. But in terms of top 30 visits, uh, everybody's talking up Ty Simpson, Kevin, the quarterback from Alabama. They're saying he's coming into the first round. Is this a reach if somebody takes him in the first round? Because realistically, to me, I think it's Fernando Mendoza, number one to the Raiders, and then there probably should be no other quarterbacks taken in the first round.
It is such a reach to think that Ty Simpson should be a first-round pick. It's because it's quarterback-starved market where you're trying to push the second best quality quarterback forward. That's agent driven, in my opinion. It's like, you need a quarterback, you're struggling, go get my guy Ty Simpson, and I don't think he's that guy. I mean, sure, will someone budge on it? I would be shocked if somebody does not take him in the first round, to be honest, because everyone needs a quarterback and someone's going to do it. Do I think it's the right decision? Absolutely not.
Yeah, and then the only year I could really think where a quarterback wasn't, Kenny Pickett in 2022, he was only quarterback taken in the first round, and that was kind of a reach, and I bet the Steelers kind of regret that, and was rightfully so. You're going to have a lot of quarterbacks and talent coming out in 2027 that a lot of teams are jockeying for. We talked about last week the tank word came out, and you're starting to wonder, where are the Jets and the Dolphins and some of these teams setting themselves up to fail so they can go after that big haul in 2027. But I think there is some excitement building in terms of the draft coming up in a couple weeks for the Pittsburgh area. And one of the players a lot of people are talking about is the defensive lineman from the University of Miami, Reuben Bain. And unfortunately, it's for a couple bad things. He's 6'3", 275. He's got shorter arms. He did have 8.5 sacks last year, but he was involved in an accident, is all coming out, where there was a death after it, and he was the driver.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even, spin that in a good way, to be honest. I mean, you have the worst, probably most horrific thing that happened in your life right before the draft, which is supposed to be the best thing in your life. And we're going to have to actually see how everything falls out from that, to see how responsible, how negligent he was in that situation, to see how it affects his draft status.
Yes, and we know, being both in the Philadelphia area, that Jalen Carter had something similar kind of hanging over his head. It stopped some teams from taking him, but the Eagles took a chance on him, and it worked out. But it's an unfortunate thing for Bain, and it's crazy, Kevin, because this time of the year, there's not a lot of things on the plate in terms of on the field until we get to OTAs, and everybody's saying about all the off the field negativity. So but you got to keep talking about what's important, and eventually it's going to be on the field. But in terms of hockey, you fired up?
I'm so fired up right now. And Flyers just tied it up 2-2. They were down 2-0 today already. So, yeah, I mean, the Flyers, last time the Flyers won a Stanley Cup, I was 1 year old. 1 year old. Not even plural, one. So at least I got to watch the Sixers win in '83. I was 9 years old. My parents let me stay up because you were still back in school in those days. It was in May, and they didn't have these long playoff runs. So, the Flyers are the only team I haven't seen won a championship in my lifetime, that I could remember. So, yeah, that'd be nice to see.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and yeah, I was a youngster when they won it last, and then we'll see. And I know a lot of people in the Philadelphia area are excited about them maybe finally making the playoffs after I think it's been 5, 6 years. They were in the bubble last time, 2020 when they took almost all the teams because of COVID. But uh, yeah, excitement around the Flyers, and everybody's also getting excited for the NFL draft, and that's what we're focusing on here in Lloyd Vance Insider Football 1029 Game Coast Sports Digital Network. Carnell Tate from Ohio State. He's the receiver everyone is talking about, Kevin. He's got that great size, 6'2", 190. He had 48 catches for 838 yards last year, 17.5 yards per catch, 9 TDs, all Big Ten. Everybody's been talking about him since he was at IMG Academy in high school. Just looks can't miss. Is he going to be gone by the fourth pick, which is Tennessee, or maybe the fifth pick with the Giants? What's going on with Carnell Tate?
I'll tell you one thing, he's not seeing double digits. He's going to be out of that green room right there real early, so he shouldn't sit down and get too comfortable. The Titans, that's the one where I see Tate going, I see Jeremiah Love going. It's like it appears that they are looking for an offensive weapon in that slot. So I wouldn't be shocked if he went there, but at the same time, it's like he's not going to hang around long.
Yeah, and Tennessee just took Rondell Robinson, and he could be a partner for him. And they're trying to build something there. Robert Salah's come in there, trying to build up that offense. They already have Cam Ward in place. Maybe they go running back. That was an area I thought was of need for them. So you got to watch Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame there, possibly. But yeah, I definitely think the Titans are probably going to go offensive there, but you never know with Salah. He's a defensive guy. Speaking of the Giants, who I mentioned earlier, they're talking about bringing maybe a receiver back, and this guy was the number one guy. He was on all the commercials. Odell Beckham Jr. He's 33 years old. He played in that flag football game a couple weeks ago. What do we think about Odell's chances of coming back?
Get the hell out of here with Odell Beckham Jr. I'll take Victor Cruz back from his Chunky Soup commercials for Odell Beckham Jr. That guy is a clown. He's made more money off a couple of catches than anyone ever will in the NFL. Were they great catches? Absolutely. Did he get a McFarland figure out of it? Yes, he did. But I also remember him arguing with Steve Smith and getting into a fight with a kicking net and losing. When it came back and hit him in the head. So he's a knucklehead, man. Yeah, you know what? I hope the Giants do bring him in. How about that?
Yeah, it's crazy with Odell Beckham. He came back in 2024. He played for Miami Dolphins last year. Played in 9 games. He had 9 receptions on 18 targets, 55 yards, no TDs. It just showed you he didn't have much left in the tank. He did play kind of well in 2023 for Baltimore. 14 games, 35 receptions, 565 yards, and 3 TDs. But I do agree with you that the career has kind of passed him over. And he's one of those guys, it's the Hall of what if he didn't get injured and all that. He did get his ring with the Rams, but unfortunately he was hurt in that game. Bounced around. And as you said, after that Sunday night football catch against the Cowboys, enough was enough. He was everywhere. He was on Tonight Show and everything he could get his hands on, but he forgot about playing the game, and you got to stay in shape and not be a celebrity. So, yeah, John Harbaugh saying maybe he'll give him a shot, but with 90 roster spots going into camp, they're precious. So we'll see if he's able to come in. We know he's not going to play special teams like some undrafted free agent from, Montana State, that's trying to make it as a gunner. So it's like, where do you use Odell Beckham Jr. if he's coming back? They already have Malik Neighbors.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he on that playoff giant boat where they didn't win anything afterwards? He was on the party boat. So, maybe he can get you, charter you a nice craft, on the water. But other than that, like you said, even when you mentioned his Baltimore stats, break him down for those games. I mean, what is that? 2.5, catches a game. It's like what's that? He's done. He's spent. He's washed.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's a long shot. 33 years old, and we'll see from there. But as I said, it's a slow news cycle. So we're talking about OBJ and whether he has a chance to come back. He did have one of his patented toe tapping spectacular catches, but it was in a flag football game. So we'll see what he does. And I think the biggest thing is he can't take the physicality of the game anymore, Kevin. He's always hurt, a myriad of injuries, and we'll see how that goes. Now, his former teammate, I believe he was Dexter Lawrence. He wants out with the Giants. I think we talked about this last week. Does he have any chance here of leaving the Giants?
If I'm the Giants, why do I do it? It's just like, nah, you signed, you're here. And to be honest, unless someone bowls me over, nah, get used to playing here, man. You're in East Rutherford. Let's do this. So, yeah, I mean, nah, he's got to stay. I don't see anyone going out to get him, offer a lot, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Dexter Lawrence is 29 years old, and last year he didn't have the particularly great season. 31 tackles, only half a sack. He's a 7-year vet. And I just, as we're saying, I just don't see another team breaking the bank to bring him in. You're just not going to see a huge trade. So he better learn to get along with the new regime. You got Harbaugh there, and that'll be interesting if he wants to get traded and Harbaugh says go pound sand. But he's under contract, and then once you start missing those training camp days, I think it's like 80,000 a day. And yeah, the cheddar cheese, man. You don't want to lose that, and we'll see. A lot of players talk tough in the preseason and all that, but when they start losing game checks, they change their mind. In the NFL, they will give you the Le'Veon Bell treatment, like, oh, okay, you don't want to play, sit out and see how that works for you.
There's no doubt about that. I mean, everyone talks tough to the walk. It's a little lighter, that kind of thing. I do want to point out my favorite fun fact of the weekend I saw, though, Lloyd. Rory McIlroy has won 2 Masters since the last time the Jets have had an interception. That is a fact, man. That is a long time.
Yeah, and Aaron Glenn is, he's a defensive mastermind, and his defense is not doing very well. And as we talked about earlier, the Jets at 3-14. Bringing Geno Smith back, and it just seems to me they're setting themselves up for that 2027 draft. Maybe Sam Hinkie's in a closet somewhere telling them trust the process, just keep tanking, and you're going to get a good high draft pick.
I mean, unless you're bringing back Freeman McNeil and Wesley Walker and Mickey Schuler at tight end, I mean, that offense has nothing going for it. I don't see the skilled position players that they do have, Brees Hall and Garrett Wilson in particular, and even Taylor at tight end, Jason Taylor's kid. I don't see them being that excited about Geno Smith coming in. They didn't have any protection last year, and it's a rough time to be a Jets fan, man. I'll say that.
It is. Everybody wants to play in the NFL until they get drafted there, and it's like, all right, good luck, young man. But there's only 32 teams, and there's 53 roster spots on the regular season roster, and you got to play somewhere. But they are a very bad team. And speaking of bad teams, we're going to jump into the team needs / mock draft here at Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. Thanks for joining Kevin and I this evening. All right, at number 11, Kevin, you have the Miami Dolphins. They were 7-10 last year. They seem to be, in seller mode. They got rid of Minka Fitzpatrick. They sent him to the Jets. They also sent Jalen Waddle to the Denver Broncos. The team they definitely need a receiver now because I don't think Tyreek Hill, they're going to re-sign him. They needed edge because they lost Chubb. I forget where he went. And then corner, so they need a variety of positions. What are we thinking in terms of the Miami Dolphins?
Reclamation project, and once again, I've said it over and over on the show. What tells me you're tanking without saying you're tanking? Kevin Patullo, come on and be our offensive coordinator. You know, they got. I mean, Tua's even gone at this point. They wait. I won't say they wasted money. They spent a decent amount of coin on Malik Willis just for the fact I guess they had money to spend. But that being said, I'm surprised A Chain's still there. It's like if you're the Miami Dolphins and you can move anything for some compensation, some draft picks, you should do it. I believe it's 7 picks in the first 3 rounds that they have, and out of those 7 picks, you gotta nail 4 of them. You have to for the future decade of your franchise. But if I'm Miami Dolphins, I go either edge rusher or cornerback. You start with the defense and go.
Yeah, and player I have my eye on for them is Mansour Delaney, cornerback from LSU. Everybody says LSU's DBU. He's 6'1", 188. Had 4 to 5 tackles, 2 interceptions last year. He could help them out a lot because you're talking about Rasul Douglas and Jack Jones were their 2 primary outside corners last year, both free agents. And you have Halfley coming over, former defense coordinator with the Green Bay Packers as the head coach. Uh, he's going to try to clean this thing up along with new GM John Eric Sullivan also coming over from the Packers. But a lot to be cleaned up there. And Stephen Ross, the owner, uh, he's aging, but he seems to have some patience. But I just don't know how much longer he's gone in terms of this organization. So nowhere to go but up for them. At 12, Kevin's second favorite team. I know it is, everybody. The Dallas Cowboys, 7-9-1. I say that tongue in cheek because he's Philly Kevin. He's a Buddy Ryan zealot. He's never liked the Dallas Cowboys. Uh, to me, they got a new defensive scheme. Christian Parker. He comes over from Philadelphia Eagles, trying to help fix this defense with Schottenheimer, the head coach. Jerry Jones is still the GM. I think they go linebacker. They need a linebacker. They're another team. They need an edge, and they also need some corner help. So I think Sonny Styles, linebacker from Ohio State, just killed it at the combine. I mean, the guy's an incredible athlete, 6'5", 243, runs like a safety, can cover, but also he can rush the passer. He lines everybody a lot of Micah Parsons, who they traded.
It is amazing how huge and fast NFL players are coming into the game today. 6'5", 243, runs like a safety. Oh my God. That's a nightmare, man. Yeah, Dallas, once again, I love Jerry being there. God bless him, live to be 120, please. But that being said, at the same time, they need defensive help. There's no doubt about it. They've needed defensive help for a while, and they have to do it. As much as I don't want them to, they have to bring defensive help in to help that team.
Yeah, and they finished dead last, we know, in terms of points. I think, well, right up there in terms of the bottom 5, points allowed. And they were in so many shootout games. So, yeah, I agree with you. They need uh, defensive help at 12. And then don't forget, Dallas is picking at number 20 because of the Green Bay Packers trade for Micah Parsons. They're going to have their chances there as well. So, lots changing for them. They got Dak, though. He threw for 4,000 yards. They had a 1,000-yard rusher, and then they had 2,000-yard receiver. So it's just like, got to get better somewhere. But I think the offensive line, which is aging, needs some help. And as Kevin said, they need help all along their defensive line, and then their linebackers and their secondary. So Dallas, yeah, I do agree with you. If Sonny Styles there, they should run that card up. So how about at 13, you have the Rams. This pick is via the Atlanta Falcons. The Rams were 14-6, but they keep this pick. They traded their own pick to the Kansas City Chiefs. What's going on in terms of the Rams?
Well, first, just to wrap up with Dallas real quick, I don't know if we've covered it on the show before, but I think, just as human beings, your off the field life will affect your play. Everyone's human. And what Dak Prescott also has gone through in the offseason with him and his fiance at the time, that have 2 children together. They're basically, had a joint bachelorette party, and now they're splitting up. So how's that going to affect Dak going forward into this season also, with the pressure of the Cowboys' money and everything else? Once again, a little more TMZ for you, but just throwing it out there. Going forward with the Rams are all in right now. They have to win. You have an aging quarterback. Basically, I think he's a Hall of Famer at this point. He's got one ring for you. I remember going into last year, Lloyd, we didn't even think he was going to play. He was getting shots in his back before week 1 of the season. So if you're the Rams, you're all in. You're trying to get guys that can help you win right now. You're not planning for down the road. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Rams make some trades on that day either.
Yeah, and when you look at the Rams, I do agree with you. It's an all-in proposition. Yeah, Matthew Stafford, he's the MVP of the league, but he's also 38 years old, and how many more years are going to get out of him? They're another team going in free agency. I would have said it was corner, but they got McDuffie traded for him from the Chiefs, and then they also signed Justin Watson coming over from the Chiefs, so they're good there. Receiver, we know Puka Nacua is going to get his stuff together in rehab. Got to go to rehab. He's there, and they said Devontae Adams. We'll see what happens there. But I think offensive line's another area where they may need some more bodyguards for Matthew Stafford up front. So I think it's definitely going to probably be offensive lineman for them. Maybe they still try to fix that defense, but they do have Verse and a bunch of other guys. So I think the Rams at 13, using Atlanta's pick, they go for defense. So at number 14, and I know my son Braden somewhere listening, and Kevin is based down near the Baltimore area. The Ravens, 8 and 9, they're picking number 14. They need a receiver. I mean, how many years have we been saying it? They need also an interior linebacker, in my opinion, because Roquan Smith, how much more time are you going to get from him? Defensive tackle, because Matabike, he's all beat up with the neck, but they need a receiver. I mean, it may keep being Mekhi Lemon, a receiver from USC. He's 5'11", 195. He had 11 touchdowns last year. He was your Biletnikoff winner. So what are you thinking in terms of Ravens and the needs?
Let's see. I'll put it this way. It's been known I'm not a Ravens guy. I do not care for the Baltimore Ravens. I'm not a big Lamar guy. Is he talented? Sure. But I will say this. Get that man some help. Get him some help out there. Man's getting killed for that franchise ever since he's been in the league. And you sit there, you won't get him a receiver besides Zay Flowers, and you drafted Bateman. Those guys stink. They're not number one wide receivers. It reminds me of McNabb getting beat up all those years with the Eagles. It's like, finally, they got T.O. for him. Go get that man a wide receiver and see what we can do. I feel bad for Lamar at this point, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with you that he does need some receiver help. They re-signed Andrews, and he's at tight end, but they did lose Likely, so they got to find somebody to be a playmaker for him, because the receiver position, yeah, you got Flowers and not much else for Lamar Jackson, and he needs a guy who's going to take some of the pressure off Flowers, open the field up, and Jackson's more of he's trying to beat people from the pocket, Kevin. He's not running around anymore making plays like he used to.
I'll tell you what, Lloyd, you know what Lamar would kill for right now? Hank Basket. He would kill for a Hank Basket. Give me somebody. I don't care what receiver New Mexico has right now. Bring him out there. That guy literally has nothing. And he has a declining tight end, and he lost his backup tight end. Give him some help, man.
Hey, I'll throw Nate Brown out there, Billy McMullen. These are all the guys that were McNabb's receivers, and terrible drafting. I mean, these guys coming out, and I remember when I was first covering the team, I mean, they were all in the locker room. I'm looking at these guys. I was like, all right, Lloyd, don't say it to them. You're a terrible draft pick. How did you get picked? But you could see Donovan, other than Chad Lewis and not much else. There just wasn't a lot of help for him. And then they decided to go in the Fred X direction. Kevin, how'd that work out?
He's a people's champ, Lloyd. He's the people's champ. I tell you what, though, I was at the game against Green Bay in the playoffs when he made the catch, and it's the only time in my life I was ever at a game when Freddie Mitchell, was it 4th and 28?
26.
4th and 26. Catches I did this. Watch me in your camera. The only time in my life I ever did this at a game. I could not believe he caught that ball, man. So I can't hate on him.
And then he put the belt on. He always had to put. called himself the people's champion. I'd like to thank my hands. That's what he would say, stuff like that. You're like, oh, Freddie, hey, look, man, he came out of UCLA and everybody thought he was the right pick, and he comes out of the same draft as what uh, Chad Ochocinco was in that draft, I believe, and also there was one other receiver. Oh, Reggie Wayne. I mean, they were both in that draft too. So a lot of good choices on the table, and they chose Fred X, and he had his moments, but he just never became that frontline receiver the Eagles wanted.
Tell you what, though, he had some charisma. I even think he did some WWE stuff for a second after that, or maybe it was still NWO stuff on TNT or whatever. But he was trying to do a little crossover at the time. But uh, he was this close to being good. He was this close to being good.
And Kevin, he's still kind of in the limelight. They had a YouTube clip or something of him running up the Rocky steps, and he was talking about how he was getting tired down, his age and everything. It was pretty funny. But that 4th and 26 will live on in Philadelphia Eagles lore forever, because I remember I was on my honeymoon, and we were at a bar in the Grill, and there were a bunch of Packers people there, and then the guy was all loaded, and he said, the season's over for the Eagles. And I said, all right, enough's enough. Get out of here. And the guy was like, I'll be right back after they don't convert this. Well, he converts it, and then Favre threw the worst interception ever as a pop fly to Brian Dawkins. Eagles win the game.
It was unbelievable. I'm watching the game, right? And it looked like a punt. Favre was done, dude. He's like, all right, hell with this, I'm out. And I was surprised Dawkins didn't fair catch it, to be honest. I mean, that was unbelievable how that game shifted like that.
Fred X, and we could go on about him, and the guy he was famous for, he was friends with Chase Utley in college. So who knows? They better hope there's no pictures out there of them, in terms of what they were doing at UCLA, having their fun time. And we talk about TMZ and all that. But getting back to the draft, we were at number 14, the Ravens. They are receiver needy. So we think they're going there. At 15, you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 8-9. They just missed the playoffs again in that wide open division. To me, they need edge help. They need linebackers. Because Levante David just retired. Their tight ends are getting a little long in the tooth. And they lost Mike Evans, maybe a receiver. So what are you thinking in terms of Tampa Bay?
I think Tampa needs to work on that defense, to be honest. They have enough offensive weapons, I think. They have some younger guys that you're ready to take the next step and everything else. Baker Mayfield, I think, is in a flux year right now. I mean, we got to the point where, all right, myself, I'll say this, I won't say people, I thought he was done after Cleveland. It's like, all right, he's done, he was a bust, blah, blah, blah. Reinvents himself with Tampa Bay, or maybe Cleveland just never gave him the opportunity. Starts winning, getting the playoffs and everything else. Beat the Eagles the 1 year in the playoffs, It's like, all right, Baker might have something here. But then they fall off last year. They should have won that division last year. That's on them a little bit. They had some injury problems and everything else. But you need to see what Baker brings to the table this year. If not, you got to go forward from him.
Yeah, and to the consternation of Angel and a lot of people that follow the Bucks, Todd Bowles came back. He kept his job, and as Kevin said, Baker Mayfield did a nice job in terms of resurrecting his career in this team, and they're just good enough to get into playoffs. Now, in terms of making a deep run, I just don't see it happening. Todd Bowles hanging in there, but they need a lot in terms of this team to help fix it up. And they're another one. They lost some players like Mike Evans, as I said, he's not there anymore. He's with the Bills, and Levante David retires. So, they have some holes to fill there. But I think, like Kevin said, maybe they go defense. Todd Bowles loves his edge rushers. Maybe a Cassius Howe, edge out of Texas A&M, 6'2", 255. He's a transfer from Bowling Green. Had 11 and a half sacks last year. That may be a fit for him. They have a new OC in Zach Robinson coming in there, but I think he's going to lose his vote at the table. They'll go with a defensive lineman probably, or a linebacker. At number 16, we're back to the Jets, Kevin. Nowhere to go but up, 4-13. This pick is from the Indianapolis Colts. We talked about needs before with them. I mean, they need everything. So What do you think the Jets with their second first round pick are going to do?
I think if you're the Jets, and once again, as we've established, they have so much to do. Don't overthink things. Best player on the board. I don't care what position. Best player on the board, grab them. And that's what they should do with every draft pick they have. Best player on the board, go. It's like, oh, well, we need this position. No, you don't. You need almost every position. Best player on the board.
Yeah, and head coach Aaron Glenn and Darren Malgi, the GM, they're kind of on the hot seat already going into the season. Woody Johnson, the owner there, and it's going to be interesting to see how they spend some of this capital because they've made some trades and trying to set themselves up. But as we said earlier, when traded for Geno Smith as your starting quarterback, and there's just not a lot there, you feel bad for Garrett Wilson and guys like him being stuck on such a bad team. But yeah, the Jets, they'll probably use that pick on a young player. Hopefully he'll develop because too often we do see them draft guys and they just don't turn out. Hello, Mark Sanchez. So at 17, you have the Detroit Lions, the darlings of the National Football League, the year before in 2024, and they kind of limped home this year, 9-8. Offensive line, they need some help because they're talking about maybe moving Panay Sewell over to the left guard, left tackle. They need edge help, and their cornerback situation is interesting as well. You have Terrion Arnold. He got himself in some hot water. More TMZ news.
Arnold got smoked last year anyway. I mean, he had a rough rookie season, in my opinion. He was getting hit for penalties left and right. They definitely, it's either offensive line or defense. You still have weapons offensively. You should be all right. I think you can still get one more year or two max out of Jared Goff, enough to be competitive where that's not your need right now. And even if you did draft one, it's not going to help you this year. So you're in it with Goff. But I think the defensive help would go a long way with them.
Yeah, and they released Taylor Decker, one of their offensive tackles, and I think that's just going to be an area of need for them. So they're going to try to bring somebody in to help Goff out. And as we know, Jahmyr Gibbs is now the featured back there, and they're going to try to get him rolling with their other pickups, and I'm sure they're going to try to help that defense even more with Hutchinson still there, and they still have some pieces defensively. So I think they're trying to go offensive line. Maybe Monroe Freeling out of Georgia. He's huge. He's 6'7", 315, moves really well. And then maybe you think about moving him to right tackle and then move Panay Sewell to left. But Dan Campbell's going to get a big person that's like to beat up people, whether it's defensive line or offensive line. So that's the Detroit Lions at 17. At 18, you have the Minnesota Vikings. Kyler Murray, that's your guy, man. He's there now. They don't need a quarterback, but they need a center. They need a safety because Harrison Smith is finally retired. They need receiver help because they brought Adam Thielen back, and then he's gone. But they still do have Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, so that may not be that much of a position need. But what do you think about the Vikings and will this pick help turn this group around?
I tell you what, Lloyd. After the show last week, I like to scoff at Kyler Murray. I may have sent you and Angel a few pictures of Kyler Murray being, diminutive, a little small. That being said, after the show last week, I'm like, I can see him having a good year for some reason. I won't say a Pro Bowl type year, but I can see the bounce back here. I think we're going to know everything we need to know about Kyler Murray this year. Because it's like, all right, you're gone from your first team. This is, your second landing spot. What are you going to do with it? You got Justin Jefferson. You have other weapons there. I would not be shocked if he had a good year. That being said, if I'm Minnesota, get some defensive help a little bit, maybe. Get some offensive line help to protect that little, fun-sized quarterback you got there.
Yeah, and don't forget, Lloyd Vance, bold prediction. I said Kyler Murray's going to be the comeback player of the year in the National Football League. So we'll see if I'm correct. I talked to Nate about it during the week. He says, yeah, it could happen. Could happen. But I think that's a little homerism. And I think, when we do our fantasy draft, he's probably still going to have him on his board, even though we know his guy's Josh Allen. But I do think that the Minnesota Vikings, 9-8 last year, I mean, they're chasing the Chicago Bears in that division, the Green Bay Packers. So, tough division. And we'll see how they do. But yeah, they're probably going to look for offensive line help. Maybe Ryan Kelly, their center, retired, and as I talked about, Harrison Smith in secondary. So Brian Flores had a great year as a defense coordinator. He's back, so he'll have a vote at the table. But yeah, the Vikings are going to be interesting at 18. At 19, you have your NFC South champions. I don't know how this happened, but yeah, the NFC South champions, the Carolina Panthers, 8-10 on the season because they lost that first round playoff game. What are we thinking in terms of the Carolina Panthers? I think they need a safety, they need a receiver, they need some edge help. They did get Jalen Phillips coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles in free agency.
Once again, going back to my bold prediction, winning the division next year with a record over 500 will be the Carolina Panthers. Now, put that in the holster. Yeah, they need some defensive help. They need some offensive line help. They need some other things going on. But there's a bright side of potential with that squad. Once again, man, they're one of those teams. They are very draft dependent because they did spend some money in the offseason. And you normally want to see Carolina do something like that. So they really need to hit on these draft picks here to keep them going forward.
Yeah, and David Tepper, their owner there, and you have Dan Morgan, their GM. They're definitely looking to improve his squad even further. They feel like, look, they're always in the dance because that division's so bad. They have a chance to win it every year, and I do believe that they may go for an edge guy to pair with Jalen Phillips. So maybe like a Akeem Mizador. He's another edge out of Miami, 5.5 sacks, 16 pressures last year. Maybe bring somebody like that in the door. At 20, we talked about this team earlier, and they need everything. Sorry, Jera. Dallas Cowboys, you're back picking at the 20th spot via that trade with the Green Bay Packers. Um, Again, linebacker, they need some help there because they had a retirement. Edge, because they have not been able to replace the guy that went to the Seattle Seahawks. And then corner, always seems to be a problem. Too many big plays in that secondary.
Bold prediction. Jerry Jones steals the envelope before they can turn it in. Ty Simpson at number 20 goes to the Dallas Cowboys. Come on, Jerry. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. I see Jerry like, Dak, it's costing us a lot of money, that kind of thing. And in a perfect world, that's how it plays out. In a realistic world, if people, get Jerry's attention with something shiny and he doesn't see the pick being made, once again, hit defense, man. They need so much defensive help right now. If I'm Dallas, I load up on defense. You gave up way too many points. You got enough weapons where you can score some. How about make it more in your favor?
And they got Christian Parker coming over there as defensive coordinator, so I'm sure he's going to be like, look, I need some help defensively. And that Ty Simpson pick there, Kevin, would fit right in to one of my bold predictions last week. I said last season for Dak Prescott as a Dallas Cowboys quarterback in 2026. He makes $63 million a year, highest paid in the National Football League, and they have not gotten the results from him. So I could see possibly something like that happening. But more than likely, they will try to get a defensive lineman. DeMarcus Lawrence was that guy I was talking about earlier. He was on the Seattle Seahawks. They got to replace him on the defensive line. And then Micah Parsons, obviously, traded him to the Packers, and that unit just was not the same. Kenny Clark getting older for them. They got over from Green Bay. So we'll see how Dallas goes. But as you said, and you were alluding to earlier, as long as Jerry Jones is their GM and Stephen Jones' son doesn't take the keys from old dad, it's going to be all uphill for the Dallas Cowboys in 2026.
I am going to blow your phone up with text messages if the Dallas Cowboys take Ty Simpson. I'm going to lose it if they do that. But would I be shocked? Absolutely not, man. Jerry does what Jerry wants to do, so we'll see how it plays out.
And if Dallas doesn't take Ty Simpson at number 20, maybe number 21, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they finished 10-8 last year. Their needs are at one point I wrote down receiver, but I don't think they need that anymore after trading for Michael Pittman Jr. They need some interior line help because I think Isaac Salamalu, they lost him. They need some safety help because they were getting along the tooth there. And let's face it, quarterback could be a position of need for them with Aaron Rodgers. He's going to be 43. What's he going to do? Kind of holding his team hostage or waiting to hear from him. Why not bring in Ty Simpson and say, you know what, enough, Aaron. We're moving forward without you.
Once again, my bold prediction of last week, one of them was Steelers under 500. That being said, how are you the Pittsburgh Steelers? You got pushed into a corner last year. You know, you played your cards wrong. It's like, all right, we had to wait on Aaron Rodgers. Do you learn from your mistakes? No, we're going to let him do the same thing again this year. How do you let a guy who's 10 years younger than me push you into a corner about playing quarterback in the NFL? Come on, man. And it's like you got Will Howard and Mason Rudolph still. It's like, it's just stupid, man. It's bad business that they didn't learn from the mistake a year ago, and they still are doing the same thing again.
And Rodgers was dink and dunk all last year. Let's face it. Gainwell was so happy to get all the screen passes, and Jalen Warren is still there, but there's just not a lot left in the cupboard. Dowdell's coming over. We'll see what he's able to do, but why not get a young quarterback and go from there? Because I'm not sure if Will Howard's the guy or Mason Rudolph, and Mike McCarthy's probably going to want to have his own guy. So the Steelers, variety of ways they can go. They were glad they won the division last year, but they got to go forward. And then at 22, another team that made the playoffs, but big disappointment. They got killed. We talked about it earlier. Justin Herbert, everybody's, he's the gunslinger. He's better than Jalen Hurts and all these other guys, but he can't win. And a big thing is that offensive line, Kevin. And that's one of the needs I wrote down right away in bold ink. They need a right guard, they need a left guard, they need a defensive tackle help. They said, Mekhi Becton's not coming back. So where did this Los Angeles Chargers go?
That's a good question, Lloyd. It's one of those teams that they can win during the regular season. Jim Harbaugh gets them to win enough games, get into the playoffs, and they can't win in the playoffs. I mean, it's evident. It's even before Herbert. You got kickers repeated years missing kicks in playoffs. That team does not win. That is actually one of the landing spots I saw maybe for A.J. Brown as well to get them a receiver out there. But yeah, Justin Herbert for his, I don't want to say legacy at this point because he's still young enough, but it's like you have to prove that you can win in the postseason, and you just have to do it.
Yeah, and receiver-wise, you got guys like Mike Williams there and Quentin Johnston. He's just an underachiever, and they need help. Maybe they go tight end there. Everybody's talking about the tight end out Sadiq out of Oregon. Maybe that's a position of need for them. They need one of those as well. At number 23, and this probably our stop and we talked about him earlier. The Philadelphia Eagles are picking at number 23. Howie Roseman, as Kevin said, yeah, he's made some moves, but it's been kind of minor. It'll probably be either edge because Nolan Smith, he's still there, but he really hasn't done that much. Jalix Hunt, he hasn't done that much. Maybe it's edge or offensive line, as we were talking about earlier. They need to start rebuilding up front. So where do you think the Philadelphia Eagles go?
In a perfect world for me, they draft Sadiq, the tight end, if he's still there. Dallas Goedert's on the back end of his contract right now. You bring in, if you're going to lose A.J. Brown, bring in two tight ends that can catch the ball with Devontae Smith and that bag of number 3 wide receivers that you have. That would make sense to me. Will it happen? Absolutely not. So, if I'm the Eagles, you need edge rushing, man. You need to get pressure on the quarterback, and it's something they were lacking. So, yeah, I think that's the way they go.
And, they got that new offense coordinator in there, Sean Mannion. Is Mannion going to make a big difference for them, or is it going to be more Mannion fighting with Sirianni? And everybody's still blaming Hurts, but I still think the coaching is one of the bigger things in terms of the Eagles' offense.
This is the year we find out, though. That's the thing. Because everyone's like, it's Patullo, it's Jalen, it's Nick. All right, we got the, puppet head Patullo out of there. So we know it's not him at this point. So is it Jalen, is it Nick? If Nick bumps heads with Mannion, now we know what it is. And I've said before, this is the year where everything blows up on the Eagles. And this is going to be Nick Sirianni's last year. And going back to another bold prediction that I made, Mike Tomlin in 2027 is the coach of the Eagles. But yeah, I think we're going to find out how much Nick really had his fingerprints on all this season.
That would be a lot of fun, Kevin. And Mike Tomlin ends up with the Philadelphia Eagles because he's no nonsense, and then the Philadelphia fans, they just keep picking a scab. They're not going to they're not going to accept the canned answer. They want to know about the fifth receiver on the depth chart. They want to know about him. Why he's not getting the ball. They know everybody. So, and also the big thing is they also lost a lot of people. We talked about this earlier. N'Kobe Dean goes to Vegas. You have Reed Blankenship going to the Houston Texans. You have Sidney Brown, who they traded. He goes to the Atlanta Falcons, and Jalen Phillips going to Carolina. So, you got some holes on this team, and Fangio, this seems to be his last ride, so you're wondering which way the Eagles will go.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, basically, they had to coerce Fangio to come back this year. Imagine if they lost Statland, Fangio, and Patullo in the same season, you know? So it's like, yeah, this is the make or break for Nick right now. If that team crumbles inside, we know it's Nick. If they don't, they come out with some heart and they fight, all right, maybe it wasn't Nick. Maybe it was a series of other events. So we're going to learn a lot this year about the Eagles.
Yes, and we know that Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, they're not afraid to fire a Super Bowl head-winning coach. Just ask Doug Peterson, who was fired 2 years after winning it all in 2017. So we'll see how the Eagles go, and we're going to stop there tonight at the 23rd pick in the NFL draft. Draft again is April 23rd to the 25th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Looking forward to it. I guess I got to start studying up more on that after I do my taxes. Don't forget to do your taxes, everybody, on Wednesday. Awful day. So make sure you do your taxes. But another great week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. Kevin, anything else before we get out of here?
Get the blankets, Lloyd. It's getting drafty. It's getting colder, man. The draft's coming, babe. Can't wait.
Yes, we are looking forward to the draft, and it was always like my Christmas day. I remember just going up to all those years going up to New York City and just spending the whole day and watching everything unfold. So it's going to be fun to see what happens in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'll take it in from home. I've been asked, oh, do you want to go, in the streets and watch in Pittsburgh? No. So we'll talk more draft and everything else next week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football. Thanks for joining us. Great job behind the glass, Angel, and I will talk to you later.